The solution to your problems can be found in your story. In today's video, I don't want to talk about history that much. I just want to talk about the trend that is all over social media. That Mr. Groenewald should be the president of South Africa to save South Africa. I'm Olani Moloi, and if you're interested in my videos, in this type of content, please hit the subscribe button, that like button, because it also motivates me to create more videos that are educational, that are based on community building. Many people right now want Mr. Groenewald here in South Africa to become the president. I'm talking about black people, to be exact. That is why I always say history is important. Even though I don't want to talk much or to say much about history, because if I can go into details and dig deep, many people would think maybe I'm against it. But at the end of the day, everyone has their options. Right now, as we speak, we have many people who are like, Mr. Groenewald is the way to go. And if you ask them why, they will give you multiple reasons based on the things that are obvious, things that are happening all over South Africa. I tried to find the source of this trend, and to be honest, I couldn't find the real source. But I just saw many posts on Facebook and people commenting under those posts about why they want Mr. Groenewald, or why Mr. Groenewald is going to be a solution when it comes to South Africa. In other words, he deserves to be the president, and he's going to make some few changes. And I've also met certain people physically, and actually they are the ones who brought this to my attention. They were talking about Mr. Groenewald, and I didn't have time to debate or to disagree, because sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes it's overwhelming to show people direction. Sometimes it's overwhelming to make people to believe in your perspectives, to see things the way you see them. Sometimes it's overwhelming, sometimes it's difficult. But some of the people that I had an opportunity to come across, they said Mr. Groenewald is going to bring corporal punishment in schools. And the corporal punishment that they are talking about has never happened in white schools, has never happened in other schools of other races. It has never happened, but it happened to African schools or to black schools. So this is where it happened. And now, when people say we have to bring corporal punishment, they have to understand that history is important. That is why I always say the solution to your problems can be found in your story. Everything has history. Everything has its own history. We can talk about computers. We can talk about network, internet, the cell phones that we are using. Everything has its own history. And people tend to ignore it. Same applies to corporal punishment, because this is one of their reasons. Corporal punishment has its own history. It started during slavery, whereby a master would just whip the slaves for committing certain mistakes. In other words, you would get certain lashes based on the mistake that you committed. And again, they would also make the slaves to fight against each other. And this is what many black people would do. So when there are two boys, maybe playing around, someone older would come and create a tension between these two boys so that they can fight against each other. And they enjoyed it. They enjoyed it. Talking about black people. And this is what happened. This took place during colonialism, during slave trade, during slavery. This is what happened. This is the history of corporal punishment. You cannot tell me that prior to slavery, black people didn't have their ways to discipline their children, because their children were disciplined through cultural education. And I don't know what are we doing right now. In other words, you want to tell me that we no longer have those techniques, those systems that we used to apply to groom our children. I really don't know, because I don't think corporal punishment is the way, because corporal punishment is the system or the method of punishment that was applied to the slaves, black people to be exact. But because black people have this tendency of forgetting, they have this tendency of adopting the lifestyle of the master. That is why we ended up seeing it in our own schools. Why? Because our forefathers used to work for these masters, and our forefathers used to be beaten. So they ended up thinking that the only way to make their children to be disciplined is to discipline them the way their masters would discipline them. Then they adopted this method of corporal punishment even in schools. That is why many of them right now, they don't know how to discipline their children without, like for an example, beating them with a whip, beating them like with an iron. In other words, beating them with a wood that cannot even be used to beat a horse or a dog. That's what black people want. They think, like for an example, this white man Groenewald would come and fix their problems in their own places, in their own schools. First of all, who is the source of these problems? The source of these problems is the very same slave master, is the very same system, is the source. But sometimes people would want to talk as if they have fact, as if you cannot debate them. You see, everything is about debate, because they want to prove that they are more intelligent than you. But I'm just here to say, everything has its own history. That is why if you want to find a solution to your problems, you need to go back to your history. If you want to discover a solution when it comes to ill discipline, you need to go back to your history. Right now we have the substances that are sold to our children, to our youth. What is the source? You have to go back to history. Why these substances were introduced? What was the reason for these substances to be introduced? I'm not trying to say maybe it's not a right thing for a white person to become a president. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that we have to know our history. If you know your history, in other words, your history will educate you so that you can know how to vote. If you are that person who likes voting, so that you can make right decisions, even when it comes to voting, even when it comes to selecting things, even when it comes to selecting everything. Your history is important. Your background is very important. Other people say Mr. Groenewald is going to fix the problem of corruption here in South Africa. But we have to go to history. What is the source of corruption in South Africa? What is the source? Because some people say in 1994 South Africa was better, South Africa was clean, South Africa was like that. Okay. But we have to focus again on the processes that led to 1994. The very same people that you praise so much, they were involved to manipulate those processes. And up to today, they are still in power. We can talk about economy, we can talk about businesses. They are still in control. And that's the sign that they are still involved even today. Because when it comes to economy, they are the ones who have more power. So in other words, they know something about this corruption. You see? And now, it hurts because there are people who are trying by all means to prove that a black person cannot do anything. A black person is a failure. By pointing out this corruption, which is done by the very same people who are working hand in hand with the slave master. The very same people who have been appointed by the slave master. We are not living in freedom. In other words, if we can understand that we don't have freedom, we don't have democracy, we don't have all these things, but we have the system of the slave master in hand, then you will understand what I'm talking about. You will understand what is exactly happening. Because now people think like this guy is going to be a solution. Okay, maybe it can be a solution, but I don't like the way people are like trying to demonstrate it, how he's going to bring an impact to save South Africa. How can you save South Africa from the system? And how can the very same people who belong to the system save South Africa from the system? It's impossible. It's impossible, because when you talk about corruption, we talk about the substances that are sold all over. We talk about all these things. We talk about alcoholism. These things have been created. These things have been allowed, and we allow them in our communities because we like these things as well. We love these things. There are things that we love, and then there are things that we don't like. But the very same things that we like and the very same things that we don't like, they come from the very same person, from the very same source. Right now, we have a problem for alcoholism, smoking of substances, crime, and many other, because they know that if you bring these things, alcoholism, if you bring these substances, they are going to destroy your structure as a society, because and they are going to cause crime. The moment you have the problem of alcoholism, substances, and then crime, then it means the community is now in disorder. There's no leader. That is why they brought these councillors to become leaders. And these councillors, these mayors, they also sleep with these children. They sleep with young girls. You get what I'm saying? These councillors, these mayors, they know that you don't have a leader. Because these councillors are not like ancient kings that we had. They are not like that. You see, these are not leaders. So that is why if you combine all these people, they form a society or a community that is living in chaos, or that is living in disorder. I'm not against Groenewald becoming a president. If possible, yes, people can vote for him. But as for me, my decision is completely different. Because I always focus on the source. I always focus on the root of the problem. All these things have been created so that we can see, so that we can think that this person is a solution and our people are not a solution. Right now is a very painful thing when you go to our municipalities. You go to our departments. It can be labor department, home affairs, traffic department. You go to schools. You go to clinics. It's a problem. It hurts. Because in the community, for an example, there are many young men and young women I grew up with. I went to school with these people. And it hurts to see them being unemployed, because I know them. They were very intelligent. They were very wise. They were committed in everything they were doing. Even now, even if they are still unemployed, you can still see that these people are very committed. You can see that there's a spark in them. In other words, the spark of diligence, the spark of resilience. I know that sometimes when you give some of these people an opportunity, they begin to change. They start messing up things. But there are others, many of them. When I see them, it hurts. Because some of them, they were more intelligent than me. But right now, they are unemployed. They are not considered. But when you go to the very same local departments, the people who have occupied those positions, the people who are working in those positions, they are clueless. They don't know anything. They are the ones who are involved in these corruptions, in these corrupt activities and everything. From the president until to the ground, this thing has been created. You can tell that it has been created that we have to hire these types of people. They have to occupy all these positions because everything has to be destroyed. To the point whereby now you can say, this man is the savior. These people can save us. These people were better. Then at the end of the day, they will bring apartheid. They will say, no, we should not always complain about apartheid. We should not always complain about apartheid. There are many black women and men who can stand up and save South Africa, like Ibrahim Traore. But now, this system has been created so that you can not think that there's any black man or black woman who can do the right thing, who can become a loyal president. They don't want that at all. This system was created. There's a source for these things. The system was organized. That is why 1994 is not just 1994. It's not like we are afraid of these people, let's just give them democracy, we are now scared. No, it was organized many years, decades before 1994, how everything was going to play out. So this is a script. In other words, there was a script that was properly organized and written accurately to make sure that there are no errors. And now we can see these are the results of that particular script, of that particular production. These are the results. That there is no black person who can run. So that is why I always say politics is a scam. Politics is a scam. Why every community cannot choose who's supposed to be a leader? Because if all of us as a community can come together and say, we want this person as a leader. We don't want politics. We want this person as a leader. We want 1, 2, 3. These people, we know, we grew up with them. We know their characteristics. We know their character. These people, they can lead us. Why can't they allow us to do that? It's because we are still under the system. They want to bring their own councillors. They want to bring their own mayors so that they can mess up the community. That's the purpose. That's the purpose. And why can't we be allowed to select our own president? They know that these puppets, no one will vote for them. They know that we can choose someone of good character amongst black people and make that person to become our leader. And that person would lead us accordingly. Look what is happening in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore is there, doing the right thing. You cannot tell me that in the entire South Africa, we don't have someone who is selfless like Ibrahim Traore. We have many of them. But the political system has been created so that it can block everyone. So that is why in order for you to become the president, you have to go through politics. Then you find out that these politicians, they earn a salary every month. They cannot be loyal to you. They cannot be loyal to you. It hurts because we have our own people, even in your area, where you are staying. It can be in Soweto, it can be in Sharpeville, it can be in various areas. It can be in Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, in the community where you come from. There are people you grew up with. They were very intelligent, they were very smart. But today, it's bad. When you look at them, you feel like you can cry because you know that I used to sit next to this person in a class, maybe in grade 6 or grade 7. And this person was intelligent. This woman was very intelligent. But now this woman is swimming in a pool of alcohol. It hurts deep because you know that had she had an opportunity, maybe her trajectory of life would have been otherwise. But because of the system, this is what we get. This is a script. This is a script. And it's very painful. And the other thing that I don't like, every time when people talk about fixing South Africa, they compare it with Zimbabwe. So now they are like another state, another failed state. They're actually talking about Zimbabwe. That's the first sign. If you're smart enough, you have to understand that's the first sign that this person cannot be trusted. Anyone who says not like Zimbabwe, be careful of that person, whether black or white. If anyone would come and say, we don't want South Africa to be like Zimbabwe, never trust that person. Even if that person is your favorite politician, never trust that particular person. You have to know that person hates you deeply because they didn't like some of the decisions or most of the decisions that Robert Mugabe had to make, because they had thought he would be their puppets forever. But along the way, Mr. Robert Mugabe changed. I know that he might not be a hero for everyone because he made some mistakes as well. But when it comes to the issue of land, I regard Robert Mugabe as a hero. I may not like how they administered maybe the land, maybe it might happen that they gave some to their friends and etc. I may not like, for an example, like that. But I just say to take what belongs to you and keep it to you. That's the most important decision or vital decision. But it doesn't mean you should oppress others. It doesn't mean you should not allow others to participate. But what I'm saying is that some of the decisions that Mr. Robert Mugabe made were on top of the world. That's what we needed. So now, every time when they say we don't want South Africa to become like Zimbabwe, they're actually referring to that specific decision that Robert Mugabe made. You cannot trust such an individual. Right now we have many people, many men in prison. Why are they there? Some people say it's because they were not disciplined. It's because they were bad. They were corrupt. This and that. It's because these people, they don't know the history. Go to the root of the problem. It was scripted. When you see hospitals occupied with people with various diseases, look at the script. When you go to prisons, the prisons are full. Go to the script. When you see many people suffering from alcoholism, the script, substances used by many people, the script, unemployment, and many people blaming government, left, right, center. There's nothing wrong about blaming. But look at the script. Every time when you look at the script, and when people ask you about the decisions or your opinions will always be different from that of the majority. Because the majority, every time when they wake up in the morning, they open a radio, and the radio will tell you that so and so is corrupt, so and so is not good, the crime rate is on another level, unemployment, so and so is better. The reason I stopped listening to radio, I stopped watching TV, mainstream media, is because when I grew up, I used to I was the first person to open the radio. I would listen to the news. Robert Mugabe this, Robert Mugabe that. He's not a good leader. He's corrupt. Then as I grew up, I was like, why this man is so corrupt? Why this man is always on media? Then I started realizing that it was scripted. Then from that day, I stopped listening to radio. So many people are controlled by what they hear from media. It can be social media, it can be mainstream media, and etc. and etc. And every time when someone comes with their opinion, no one is there to challenge their opinion. Even my opinion, you are free to challenge it, respectfully so. There's absolutely nothing wrong. But what I'm saying is that let's consider history. That is why I always say history is very important. I didn't want to talk about this situation, but it hurts me. This is the video that I can say it makes me to be very emotional, because I know where this is going. If you're interested in my videos, even in the future, hit that subscribe button, because my videos are all about community building, societal building. It's all about building our family structures. It's all about that. And I know many people don't like that because of what the media has put in their minds. But if you like this type of content, hit the subscribe button, that like button, because it will also motivate me to create more videos.